Welcome back to the Igniting Dreams Within podcast, where we solve life and business problems that transform businesses and individuals into happier and fulfilled ones. I'm your host, Ebenezer Mamabolo, and today we are talking about dropping the standard of excellence. Let me repeat that again. Dropping the standard of excellence. Many a time in our lives when we are so used to consistently giving peak performance or excellent standards, sometimes we get tempted to wing it once in a while. I like what my mentor said. He said, knowing how gifted I am, knowing and seeing how great I am because I've got this gift, when I started out in my career, I was very tempted to wing it. I was tempted not to invest the hours in practice. I was tempted not to invest many hours of consistent practice in sharpening my craft so that when the time comes, when it's time for me to perform, I would be excellent or I would give excellent results. So the temptation was there for me to give mediocre performance. But he said, I made the commitment that even though I am gifted, even though I know that I would just spend maybe a couple of minutes before I got on stage, but because of the standard of excellence that I want to keep, I want to make sure that every day I prepare. And he taught me what he calls the rule of five. The rule of five simply states that there are 5 things that you and I need to do every day to make sure that we are consistently excellent in our craft. And in this case, he's a preacher, he's a speaker, he's an author, and every day he researches, every day he reads books, every day he practices his craft. It's his daily routine, and it's what consistently makes him an excellent presenter when he gets on stage. It's what makes him an excellent writer in his books. And sometimes, because of the consistent level of excellence that we've been producing in our craft, we tend to shy away or we get lazy. And this is what happened recently to me. A couple of weeks ago, or is it a week ago? A week ago, yes. Last weekend, my sister was coming back from Johannesburg, and she had come to visit to see the family, taking just a few days away from work to come and see the family. And because she left late and had to arrive late in the evening, I saw this as an opportunity. I saw this as an opportunity to hijack her into her buying me a burger. Because we recently had one of the McDonald's shops open here locally. And I was so excited, because McDonald's has been producing excellent burgers that I love very much. And I even remember from when I was still young, my father used to take us to Savannah Mall because at the time it was the only McDonald's that was around in our area. And he used to take us there. We would go and get our Happy Meal, enjoy the burger, then go to the playground and play. And it became one of my favorite spots to go and visit. But when I finally heard that McDonald is coming to near me, I was very excited. So she came, took me there, and we spent, roughly an hour plus waiting for the burger to arrive. And to my disappointment, when the burger arrived, I've never seen such a horrible McDonald's burger as that one. I'll upload a picture and I'll show you how horrible the burger was. You find that it's not presented in that standard of excellence that I'm used to from being a child when I was still young. Oh, the standard of excellence. I knew that the burger would be so brilliant, by just looking at it, man, you'd feel satisfied. But in this case, after the excitement and the waiting to receive a McDonald's burger with a standard of excellence that was dropped, I was very disappointed. And I even lost my appetite for it. I took a bite, trying to taste if it's still the McDonald's burger that I knew. And it felt off. It felt off because someone decided that instead of committing to the excellence that I was always given from when I was young, the excellent burger that I've been receiving when I was young, they had disappointed me. Not only did they drop the standard of excellence, and the following day when I was supposed to go back, I was like, it's not worth it. I'm not gonna go back to McDonald's for that crappy burger that I had last time with my sister. And they ended up, I don't know if I should say losing a customer or what, but they lost. They ended up, whoever made that crappy and that worst McDonald's burger for me that day ended up ruining McDonald's burger for me, because now every time when I pass by there, even when I'm hungry, even when I'm even craving a burger, I'd rather pass by the McDonald's, because I don't want to get a repeat of that dropped excellent standards that I got that day. And even especially because I went there in the evening. Do you know how I spent time waiting, saying that the queues would be limited because by that time it's evening. And to make even matters worse, when you got there, the queues were so long. That standard of excellence that McDonald's keeps of saying that we will produce our burgers in the standard of excellence in this specific time interval, it wasn't even being met. And it was the worst. Yeah, the better word would be the worst McDonald's in South Africa, if I may, because they had dropped the standard of excellence so low that even the systems, the agreement that they made, McDonald's doesn't, according to the systems of McDonald's, you are not even supposed to be spending more than 9 minutes in the shop waiting for a burger, or even in the drive-thru. But that day you were spending more than an hour in the drive-thru, more than an hour waiting, even in the shops. That's how bad, that's how worse the standard of excellence was dropped too. And that's what happens in people's lives, or in our lives, or in our careers. When we get so comfortable that we think that because we've been excellent for such a long time, let's just be mediocre for one time in our lives. And you might find that that moment of mediocrity, that moment of a standard of excellence being dropped, it makes you lose out a lot in life. And I've also experienced this in my life. There are 3 things that I've been committed to doing. The first one is personally growing and developing myself every day. The second one was coding. And the third one was teaching. And I've been doing these 3 things every day. I taught myself how to code. I taught myself how to study this concept and this complicated scientific concept, things like psychology, philosophy, all those advanced studies. I've been studying them and I've been teaching myself them for a long time. But one day I got lazy. I remember when I was writing my Facebook, I had gotten to an excellent standard that I would be reading a minimum of 4 books per week. I was so brilliant at doing it, I knew that it takes me roughly, I would just read 1 chapter per setting. I would be in the library when I was about to study. I would read 1 chapter. When I'm done studying, I would read another chapter. What I usually do was that in the morning when I woke up, I would read 1 chapter. Then I would listen to tapes. I would listen to lectures, audio books, podcasts. Then when I got to the library, I would read another chapter yet again. Then I would study. Then after that, in the last moment, I would read another chapter. Then on my way back home or back to my room, I'd be listening to audiobooks, I'd be listening to tapes, and I'd be listening to podcasts. Getting my personal development in, I'd spend a minimum of 8 hours a day. 8 hours a day working on myself, sharpening and developing my craft every day. But when I began writing my Facebook, I wanted to have original ideas. I didn't want to have my thinking polluted or to have my thinking influenced by the authors, by the mentors, by the coaches that have been coaching me for a long time. I wanted to have my own original ideas. And I spent, I think it was maybe 6 months or so, working on my book, the research, and I stopped reading. And my excellent standard of reading a minimum of 4 books a week dropped. And it worsened. And over time, it got so worse that I couldn't even read 1 book a week. From moving from 4 books, a minimum of 4 books a week, to even sometimes not even reading a book a week, to even getting worse, to not even reading a book a month, to even going worse, to not even reading a book after a couple of months, my standard of excellence had dropped. It dropped. And another area in my life where I dropped the standard of excellence was when I was coding. I got to a point where I didn't know if I wanted to go. I knew that I wanted to be a full-time speaker. I knew that I wanted to be a full-time coach. I knew that I wanted to do personal development full-time. But I wasn't earning an income from it. So I thought that if I focus solely on personal development, developing myself as a speaker, developing myself as a coach, I would become so excellent in my craft that I would even be paid high fees for it. The best part was that, yes, with that level of personal development, I got paid high fees. But the drawback was that it wasn't consistent. I wasn't consistently getting paid to come and speak. I wasn't consistently getting paid to come and coach. I wasn't getting consistently paid to be a full-time speaker or a full-time coach. And as a result, because I had dropped the standard of excellence as a coder, I had dropped the standard of excellence as a hacker, I got to a point where my coding skills dropped. They dropped. My instinct to code, my instinct to debug code, my instinct to see errors in code, to debug functions, to debug classes, it dropped so low that I even went on a software engineering boot camp. And on that boot camp, I found myself failing to solve problems that if I had been consistent in my coding ability, I would have been solving problems that instantly. And when I saw that, now I had become the jack of all trades and the master of none. I wasn't consistently earning an income as a speaker full-time. I wasn't earning a consistent income as a coach full-time. And at the time, I even shut down my photography business. Now I wasn't even getting income as a photographer. I even shut down my videography business. So I wasn't even generating income as a videographer, as a photographer. Now I wasn't even generating income as a coder. I wasn't sharpening or developing my skills further as a coder, as a software developer, as a software engineer. Now I was consistently becoming average. There was no area in my life that I was even standing out. And it even got worse. Instead of consistently producing content for social media every day, I even dropped in that area. So I became average. And I became average in everything that I was doing. I became an average speaker. I became an average coder. I became an average photographer. I became an average videographer. Now, by the time I realized the mistake that I made when I dropped my standard of excellence, now when I was I said, okay, because I dropped my standard of excellence in all those areas, let me go into podcasting. Then I went to podcasting and I was consistently creating content. But because of the intensity and the financial resources that were needed for me to consistently produce my podcast, I also dropped the standard of excellence in that area. So I lost my audience. Not only did I lose my audience as a speaker, as a writer, as a coder, I ended up becoming the jack of all trades and the master of no craft. And those were some of that's probably the most painful lesson I learned in 2019. 2019 has been a great year, but dropping that standard of excellence Yes, when I get up to speak because of how excellent I am and how intense I would be or I am and how great I am as a presenter, how great I am as a researcher. For you would probably it's what usually happens. I would get a standing ovation, I would get a round of applause. Yes, because I've put in the craft, but when you compare me to other people, I'm the best, I'm the greatest. But when I compare myself to the amount of excellence, the excellence that I've been producing consistently over time, I realized that no, I have dropped the ball when it came to the standard of excellence. And this is what happens when you drop the standard of excellence. You even lose the confidence you had in yourself. You even lose that pride, that authenticity, to say that, man, I'm giving my very best. Yes, now I'm giving my very best. But Ebenezer today compared to Ebenezer a year ago, the Ebenezer now is a mediocre Ebenezer. Even though this new Ebenezer is a great Ebenezer in your standard or the way you'd be looking at me, but when I compared to who I was, I had dropped my standard of excellence. And now, as I continue to work on elevating, on increasing my standard of excellence, this is the lesson that I learned, and this is what I want to share with you. Don't ever drop the standard of excellence. No matter what you're doing in your life, no matter what you're doing in your business, no matter what's happening in your dreams, don't ever drop the standard of excellence. When you drop the standard of excellence, not only are you killing yourself, not only are you destroying yourself and the esteem, the confidence, the pride you have in your craft, but you are also dropping the quality. You are reducing the excellence that you see in yourself. Don't ever drop the standard of excellence, my friend. Yes, you might be gifted in many areas and you might be tempted to venture into many areas or to diversify, as in business, because in business I'm diversified, or in my investments I'm diversified. I'm invested in tech companies, I'm invested in investment companies, in investment portfolios. Yes, in my investments or in my businesses. No, in my investments I'm diversified. In what I invest in, I'm diversified. But in my business, I am a speaker and I'm a coach. That's what I do in my in Igniting Dreams Within. I speak, I coach, and I train. And outside of Igniting Dreams Within, I am a coach and a speaker, and I am also a programmer. And it's what I do. I am a hacker. It's what I do. And nowadays, because I learned from this mistake when I dropped the standard of excellence, I'm now working on becoming a consistent, excellent coder, working on becoming a consistent, excellent hacker. When I elevate, when I get to the level that I want to be in, even next year, I'll be releasing apps, and I'll be releasing software that I'll be selling for businesses. And when you see me next year, I would have elevated my standard of excellence. And when you see me no longer producing 2 episodes of my podcast, please understand that I am not giving up on you. I'm not stopping on developing you. But I'm just going to take some time off to just only produce 1 episode a week so that I'll be able to rise those other areas, the standard of excellence. And you'll hear me and you'll even see the results. From nowadays, I'm going to be producing 1 episode a week. And when I've got guests for my podcast or when I record interviews, that's then when I'll be producing maybe 2 episodes in that week, or maybe even more than 2 episodes in that week, because I would have recorded my solo podcast and I'll also have a guest on my podcast. And after that, probably in December, just like what happened last year, maybe December and January, I would also be off social media for me to increase or to elevate into greater levels my standard of excellence. And when you don't see me on social media, or when you don't hear me posting on social media, that won't mean that I'm offline. I would be offline from social media, but because you would be subscribed to my podcast, you are sharing my podcast, whenever I'll be producing a new episode, you will be notified. So please subscribe to my podcast, share the podcast with others, and keep on reminding yourself and your friends. Don't ever drop the standard of excellence in your life. Don't ever drop the standard of excellence in your business. Don't ever drop the standard of excellence in your career, because when you drop that standard of excellence, you are definitely going to fall into mediocrity if you are lucky. And if you are unlucky because you haven't invested the 10,000 plus more hours invested in your craft, you'd even drop below mediocrity. I don't know what's the level below mediocrity, but you'd even drop to that level. So my friends, as you are listening to this podcast, ask yourself these questions. In which areas in your life have you dropped the standard of excellence? Did you drop the standard of excellence in your career? Did you drop the standard of excellence in your business? Did you drop the standard of excellence in your family relationships? Did you drop the standard of excellence in your business relationships? And when you discover those areas or those parts in your life where you had dropped the standard of excellence, look for ways to elevate. Look for ways to increase that standard of excellence. Don't fall down into mediocrity. It's been said that it's not overcrowded at the top because everyone is jam-packed in mediocrity. It's not lonely at the top. It's lonely at mediocrity. My friend, thank you for tuning in. And in whatever you do, in whatever area, in whatever pursuit you are pursuing, don't ever drop the standard of excellence. Keep the standard of excellence. I'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in.